welcome to another edition of the Economy and Politics Show. It's a brand new month of July. Happy New Month to you all, and the beginning of the second half of the year 2020. Interesting year indeed. In this episode, we'll take you to a recap of key developments that shaped the first half of the year 2020, the socio-economic space in the first half of the year. This edition will also look at some of the key developments, policies, reports that occurred during the period. Don't forget that this was the first half of the year was seriously and disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has shaped a lot of things across the globe, in Africa and indeed Nigeria. But let's first take a look at the current economic indicators for Nigeria. Our gross domestic product for the first quarter of 2020 released by National Bureau of Statistics shows that we are growing at 1.87%. Inflation rate in the country is 12.4%. Our misery index is 55.1%. Interest rate is 12.5%, and unemployment is 23.1%. Let's begin with the Economic Sustainability Plan, which was rolled out in the first half of the year by the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, with Vice President Professor Yemi Osibanjo as chairman steering the ESP. This was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the need for Nigeria to sustain growth and also deepen activities across all sectors. The Federal Executive Council approved the 2.3 trillion naira stimulus plan for the Economic Sustainability Plan, which is designed to support economic recovery and stabilization. Funding of the plan will come through 500 billion naira from special accounts, 1.11 trillion naira from the Central Bank of Nigeria's structured lending, and 302.9 billion naira from other funding sources. The ESP is focused on stimulating the economy by preventing business collapse and ensuring liquidity, retaining or creating jobs using labor-intensive methods in key areas like agriculture, facility maintenance, housing, and direct labor interventions. Undertake growth-enhancing and job-creating infrastructural investments in the roads, bridges, solar power, and communication technologies. Promote manufacturing and local production at all levels and advocate the use of made-in-Nigeria goods and services as a way of creating job opportunities, achieving self-sufficiency in critical sectors of our economy, and curbing unnecessary demand for foreign exchange, which might put pressure on the exchange rate in the country, and extending production to the very poor. I take that again. Extending protection to the very poor and other vulnerable groups, including women and persons living with disabilities through pro-poor spending. The ESP is focused on the following key projects. A mass agricultural program. Remember that this administration is focusing on agriculture to really drive its economic activities. Through the CSP project, is expected to bring between 20,000 and 100,000 hectares of new farmland under cultivation in every state of the Federation. The aim is to create millions of job opportunities directly and indirectly over a 12-month period. A significant number of Nigerians will be incentivized to engage in farming and agro-processing, as that is a field in which Nigeria has comparative advantage. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture and the Central Bank of Nigeria Governor have agreed a detailed plan of action in this regard. The extensive public works and road construction program, this will focus on major and rural roads. As the country cannot afford to continue with the importation of bitumen for road construction, emphasis will now be on the use of locally available materials like limestone, cement, and granite, options that have been explored for using these materials in major federal highways. Similarly, a significant number of workers can be engaged in the construction of rural roads using stones and other materials available locally. The Honorable Minister of Works and Housing is developing an engineering concept and template for this approach in order to assist the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, which is responsible for rural roads. Look at the mass housing program. This program is expected to deliver up to 300,000 homes annually, engaging young professionals and artisans who form themselves into small and medium-scale businesses within the construction industry. Such enterprises will use indigenous labor and material working on dedicated housing sites. This will also entail, for instance, doors, windows, and other materials which will be produced during this period. finished or assembled at mass housing construction sites. Also, house designs can be standardized and costed with economies of scale in mind to ensure their affordability. This ESP is themed Bouncing Back, Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan. For the construction of houses to continue uninterrupted across the country, the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, Central Bank of Nigeria, and Family Homes Fund are making arrangements for purchase through cooperatives and for warehousing of completed houses, which will then be mortgaged or let out on rent to own basis. Installation of solar home systems is also part of the projects. This will cover up to 5 million households, serving about 25 million individual Nigerians who are currently not connected to the national grid. In view of the scale of materials required, solar equipment manufacturers will be required to set up production facilities in Nigeria, thereby offering additional job opportunities to Nigerians in the country. In addition, installation, servicing, and payment collections are expected to provide thousands of other jobs in the country. Strengthening the social safety net is also a core project of the ESP. This will be achieved through an increase in the number of cash beneficiaries, empower volunteers, and sundry traders enjoying small and micro loans through the market money and trader money schemes. The pre-existing conditional cash transfer will be extended to cover mostly the rural poor. However, on account of the current lockdown, most of the urban poor, artisans, laborers, petty traders, street vendors, cart pushers have become further impoverished. Support for the micro, small, and medium enterprise will also be a key project in the ESP. This will involve implementation of a scheme to support business activities of MSMEs to guaranteed offtake of items like personal protective equipment, face shields, face masks, hand sanitizers, shoe covers, and soaps. In this regard, it is expected to catalyze massive investments in light manufacturing, which will ensure that many common articles of everyday use are made in Nigeria to acceptable standard. Reduction in NAFDAC registration. During the first half of the year, practical support has been initiated for MSMEs as an immediate response to support resilience. This was why the National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control implemented 80% reduction of its registration charges and provided waiver of administrative charges for product license renewals. A survival fund. The survival fund is to give payroll support to small and medium-sized enterprises so that they can keep their employees and help maintain jobs. Also in the project is the promotion of domestic gas utilization. This is to take advantage of Nigeria's abundant gas resources, which is also cheaper and more friendly to the environment. This project will promote indigenous manufacture of gas cylinders, building of gas filling stations, and conversion of cars to promote the wide use of compressed natural gas in the domestic market. Digital technology is also a key project in the ESP, which is driven to foster a culture of innovation and create a wide variety of technology and ICT jobs. Special attention which will be paid to the promotion of technology hubs, call centers for business process outsourcing, and digitization of processes, both in government and within the private sector. Experience thus far indicates that if well harnessed, this is a sector that can create jobs on a large scale and earn foreign exchange for the nation. That's the ESP and its projects and prospects for Nigeria's economy. In the course of the first half of the year, WebTV relaunched its Economy and Politics show. It has featured through and has brought on board policymakers, economists, analysts, trade group leaders, and even business leaders. Yeah, over 20 issues have been raised from the conversation so far that should be of interest to stakeholders, populace, and indeed government and all investors who look at Nigeria. The first issue raised through the discussions was the need for fiscal restructuring, covering the federal, state, and local governments. The need for a robust and dynamic economic management model, which should bring clarity on Nigeria's economic philosophy and direction. Liberalization of Nigeria's foreign exchange management approach. This has been one of the key takeaways from the engagement. Deepening the ease of doing business environment in Nigeria to attract more investments and support businesses. Leveraging the capital market to raise developmental bonds for the economy, which government should bring to the mainstream the role of the capital markets. exploring the deepening of gross capital formation space in the country, considering the need to leverage the capital market's capacity, considering Nigeria's increasing appetite for borrowing. Unlocking debt and idle assets for liquidity, which is a major challenge as Nigeria continues to battle and grapple with the issues of liquidity. Giving top priority to the manufacturing sector in the area of FX assets. This is a key word from the key stakeholders in the manufacturing space and something of interest for the Central Bank of Nigeria to consider. Investing more in education and health sectors, which will be a priority for the federal government in its budgeting process. The need to leverage data and integrate it into national planning. Data harmonization, ramping up data, and indeed utilizing it effectively for planning has become very critical. The signing of the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission Act is one major takeaway that has to be taken seriously. Hopefully that happens the second half of the year. This will empower the ICRC to coordinate effective PPPs. We will not be able to have public-private partnerships and effective concessions if the LCIC Act is not signed, empowering it to carry out this function. Reinforcing the need for Nigeria to address its transportation network. Never has the time come for Nigeria to address it than now, where we need to sustain economic growth, open up the space for effective logistics, and support sectors like agriculture and manufacturing. The need for a development state economic model is an interesting insight into Nigeria facing the reality of deepening its public sector to support a private sector that will drive economic activities. The reality that banks face a rising case of non-performing loans, which may lead to some possible measures. There's a warning that NPLs may rise for banks and that we may likely also see some measures in the second half of the year. Easing the right-of-way charges for a seamless broadband infrastructure. The digital economy in Nigeria will not thrive except the right-of-ways for broadband infrastructure is enabled in a way that people can invest more. So far, we have 3 state governors have created that access way. The governor of Ekiti State, Dr. John Kayode Fayemi, who is the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, the governor of Kaduna State, Madam Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna, and also the governor of Kwara State, His Excellency Abdurrahman Abdulrazak. Leveraging the capital market to privatize state-owned enterprises and assets. This has been a resounding key takeaway from our conversations, the need for the Bureau of Public Enterprise to work with all stakeholders to bring on board state assets, state-owned enterprise, example, the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, to the capital market. Deepening our healthcare infrastructure has become a very important issue, and also healthcare insurance. Nigeria's health insurance is below 2%, not too good for a country that has over 180 million people. There's a need for Nigeria to deepen its health infrastructure and health insurance. Integrating insurance into the mainstream of economic planning and activities of the nation. We got a key takeaway that insurance has always been at the back, but now it has to be brought to the front burner in terms of budgeting plan and in terms of strategy of the economy. Without insurance coming in, it may really affect Nigeria's prospect for sustainable growth. And from the creative industry, we got also a key takeaway that Nigeria must ensure intellectual property rights are entrenched and that piracy is tackled to its root. Nigeria's creative industry has the potential to employ millions of people, but if IP rights and piracy is not addressed, it will continue to rob that industry of millions of dollars. The need for President Muhammadu Buhari to sign the Electoral Act into law from the political space. If the president signs this, it will open up the election space and make it more transparent, and Nigeria will see more credibility in the electioneering process. The fintech industry, we got to understand, attracted $50 million investment in the first quarter of 2020. That shows that the fintech industry is one industry that will continue to attract more investments and will continue to deepen the technology space in Nigeria. The need for Nigeria to aggressively invest in research and development. The COVID-19 pandemic showed that Nigeria needed to invest more in R&D because of the need for healthcare, innovation, and even vaccines. That has become an imperative, and we believe that the government will take this and the public-private sector will take it seriously, working together. The need to reposition Nigeria's Mines and Steel Ministry. Already the current minister, architect Olamilekan Adegbite, has talked about the strategy to ensure that by 2025, Nigeria is contributing 5% to GDP from the solid mineral space. Nigeria's fiscal and monetary policies must be focused on driving productivity. Currently, Nigeria's economy is consumptive, which is not good and not sustainable, showing part of the reasons why the Central Bank of Nigeria faces pressure in its foreign exchange management. So it's time for Nigeria to focus on productivity. The need to improve its ease of paying taxes. Nigeria is not doing so well in paying taxes. It's not in the top 100, and it has become very important that reforms in the tax and fiscal space ensures that we get to top 100 and people are allowed and are able to pay their taxes as when due. The country must give top priority to diversifying its revenue sources. This has become a major theme song among economists and policy analysts, and definitely we hope that by the end of this year, we won't be coming to discuss diversifying revenue sources, but we're looking at other very critical issues. The excess crude account should be incorporated into the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Very interesting insight from one of our conversations, where it was said that we should look at the ECA being integrated into the SWF like we see in Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, and even Denmark. Policy waivers and encouragement of local content manufacturing for the renewable energy industry. This will become very critical in this time. Already we are seeing some signs in the ESP where the solar manufacturing will be given top priority in localized local content levels. The need for the Investment and Securities Act of Nigeria to be reviewed to attract investment in the economy. Experts and stakeholders, particularly in the private equity and venture capital space, feel that the ISA needs to be reviewed to create an enabler for more investments into the economy. Titling, technology adoption, and liquidity are key elements for the Nigeria's real estate sector. For those that follow the real estate sector, it's been facing a challenge of growth. But if we can address titling, adopt technology effectively, and also address the issue of liquidity, real estate in Nigeria will unlock its potentials and contribute robustly to our growth. And indeed, the need for economic pragmatism and robust institutions. We all agree that without pragmatism in economic planning and robust institutions, all our plans, all our indicators, everything that we plan to do will continue to face challenges. And these are very interesting insights from the first half of the year for the Economy and Politics show. And definitely, by the end of the year, we'll give you a review of key thoughts also in the second half of the year. We just want to ensure that it's not just the discussions, not just the key takeaways, but policymakers and all stakeholders are listening and are beginning to align to move Nigeria forward. First half of the year 2020 was a busy one for the Central Bank of Nigeria. Considering the fact that COVID-19 pandemic also impacted Nigeria, the CBN brought out its response plan and took some steps. It rolled out 50 billion naira targeted facilities at small and medium enterprises affected by the pandemic and households to assess and gain support during the period. 100 billion naira was also rolled out for the pharmaceutical industry, which in our interaction with two of the CEOs of major pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria have been processed and will be able to assess them to expand their operations and support the healthcare sector. The Central Bank of Nigeria also partnered with the Nigerian Business Group to set up the Coalition Against COVID-19, CACOVID. This has raised over 25 billion naira and is also designed to support the recovery efforts in Nigeria from the pandemic. The Central Bank of Nigeria also, in rolling out its interventions, reduced interest rates for businesses and borrowers from 9 to 5%. In terms of appointments in the first half of the year, we saw several appointments that occurred from the key political space down to the economy. Let's just capture some of them. Professor Ibrahim Gambari, former Nigerian United Nations permanent representative, took over from late Malam Abba Kyari as Chief of Staff to President Muhammadu Buhari. In the regulatory space, Mr. Lamido Yuguda was appointed the Security and Exchange Director General, that's Security and Exchange Commission Director General, which now puts to rest the era of having acting Director Generals without a substantive one after Mr. Moana Guazo. Also, Mr. Sunday Thomas was confirmed as the Commissioner for the National Insurance Commission. Mr. Boss Mustafa, was the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, was appointed the Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Professor Umaru Dambata was confirmed and reappointed to to serve as Executive Vice Chairman and Director General of the Nigerian Communications Commission. These are some of the key appointments, reappointments that occurred during the first half of the year. In terms of reports, the total value of importation into Nigeria stood at $5 billion, 854 million. This was the first quarter 2020 report from National Bureau of Statistics. This represented an increase of 53.97% compared to the fourth quarter of 2019 and minus 31.19% decrease compared to the first quarter of 2019. The largest amount of capital importation by type was received through portfolio investments, which accounted for 73.61% of total capital importation, followed by other investments, which accounted for 22.73%, and the one that we always clamor for, the foreign direct investment, which was a huge low. It accounted for 3.66% of total capital imported in first quarter 2020. By sector, capital importation by banking dominated the space, reaching $2.990 billion of total capital importation in first quarter 2020. The United Kingdom emerged the top source of capital investment in Nigeria in first quarter 2020 with $2.908 billion. This accounted for 49.68% of total capital inflow in first quarter 2020. By destination of investment, Lagos State emerged as the top destination of capital investment for the second quarter running in Nigeria in first quarter 2019. Corresponding quarter, $5.135 billion came in through Lagos. This accounted for 87.72% of the total capital inflow in first quarter 2020. In terms of banks, Standard Chartered Bank of Nigeria emerged as the top of the capital investment in Nigeria by first quarter 2020 with $1.656 billion, accounting for 28.30% of our total capital inflow in the country. And talking about growth, yes, the big growth news came in first half of the year. According to National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria grew by 1.87% year-on-year in real terms. This performance was recorded against the backdrop of significant global disruptions resulting from COVID-19 and the public health crisis, a sharp fall in oil prices and restricted international trade. The performance recorded in first quarter 2020 represented a drop of minus 0.23 percent points compared to first quarter 2019, which had minus 0.68 percent points, reflecting the earliest effects of the disruption, particularly on the non-oil economy. Quarter-on-quarter, real GDP growth was minus 14.27% compared to 5.59% recorded in the preceding quarter. In the quarter under review, aggregate gross domestic product stood at $35.6 billion in nominal terms. This performance was higher when compared to the first quarter of 2019, which recorded $31.8 billion. With a nominal growth rate of 12.01% year-on-year, that was the sequence. Relative to the first quarter of 2019, the nominal growth rate was higher by 0.11 percent points, but lower than the preceding quarter by minus 32 percent points. For better clarity, the Nigerian economy has been classified broadly into the oil and non-oil sectors, and of course, the oil sector continued to dominate with 5.6%, while the non-oil sector grew at about 1.7%. And that was the report that we had for the first half of the year. Looking at internally generated revenue, which is also a major source of funding for states and the federal government, the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory IGR figure for the year 2019 hit 1.33 trillion naira compared to 1.17 trillion naira recorded in 2018. This indicated a positive growth of 20.92% year-on-year. Similarly, the fourth quarter of 2019 showed the FCT IGR figure hit 346.20 billion naira compared to 294.11 billion naira in the third quarter of 2019. These indications showed a positive growth of 17.71% quarter-on-quarter. Lagos State still remains the highest IGR source in the country as it recorded 298.73 billion naira in the year in review, closely followed by Rivers State with 140.40 billion naira, while Taraba recorded the least internally generated revenue in the country. Well, those are the updates, and just know that we'll continue to give you insights into developments in the economy. The second half of the year promises to be very interesting, and we'll look into what are the key things that will shape the second half of the year in our next edition. It's been nice having this conversation with you. Looking forward to a very interesting second half of the year 2020, July 1st, and we'll continue this conversation. You can always watch our videos and get our reports and analysis as they come. And that'll be all for the Economy and Politics Show. Join our website www.proshareng.com to watch our videos, get our insights and our news stories and videos. Till we come your way again. Thank you for watching. And don't forget, by 10 a.m. we have a market review conversation, interesting one on collective investment schemes. You don't want to miss it. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice time, stay safe, and have a great month.